He's the #1 premier filmmaker, pop filmmaker in the world. I mean, the world. And he says, no, seriously, I'm gonna send it to you.
It begins with a soundstage in Burbank. Bright lights, studio laughter, and the familiar rhythm of a live audience cheering for a hit sitcom. It's 1994, and Pam Grier has just walked onto the set of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. For millions of viewers, it's just another guest spot on television's most beloved comedy. For her, it feels like stepping into a new era, one where her power, beauty, and legend could reach a new generation. But what no one knew was that this appearance would spark whispers that would follow her for decades. By the time the episode finished airing, tabloids were already twisting the story. Pam Grier banned from Fresh Prince. It wasn't true. Not really. The truth was far more complicated, and far more revealing about how Hollywood treats women who refuse to play by its rules. Long before the laughter and studio applause, Pam Grier had learned what pain was. Born May 26, 1949, in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, she grew up between Air Force bases and borrowed homes. Always the new kid, always the outsider. Her father, Clarence, was strict but loving. Her mother, Gwendolyn, worked long nights as a nurse. Because of her father's job, they moved constantly, from Carolina to England to Colorado, never staying long enough to belong. In England, Pam noticed something striking. No one seemed to care about her skin color. Children played together freely. But when she returned to America, that innocence vanished. The buses that passed her family by, the restaurants that turned them away, the store clerks who wouldn't let her father try on clothes, all of it etched itself into her young heart. At 6 years old, the worst thing imaginable happened. She was visiting relatives in Colorado when a group of older boys cornered her in a laundry room and raped her. A phone repairman walked in, froze, and then, unbelievably, went back to fixing the line while the little girl cried. She told no one for years. The trauma festered, turning her once bright confidence into fear and stuttering silence. At 18, it happened again. Another assault, another wound she buried deep inside. The pain became armor. The world thought she was just tough. In truth, she was surviving. By her late teens, she was working every odd job imaginable, singing backup for bands, modeling for art classes, answering phones in casting offices, trying to carve a path towards something bigger. She was mixed race, Black, Hispanic, Filipino, Chinese, and Cheyenne. And Hollywood had no idea what to do with someone who looked like her. Casting directors wanted her to play exotic background women, temptresses, or servants. She refused. Then came the fateful meeting with Roger Corman, the independent producer who saw in her something others couldn't: power. He cast her in The Big Doll House, 1971, a low-budget women-in-prison movie that exploded into a worldwide hit. For the first time, audiences saw a woman, not a man, throw punches, take hits, and fight her way out of hell. Pam Grier didn't fake any of it. She did her own stunts, bruised her own body, and channeled all that buried rage into every movement. Coffee, Foxy Brown, The Big Bird Cage. Each film turned her into a mythic figure. She wasn't just acting. She was rewriting what a female hero looked like. She refused to be a victim on or off screen. In Coffee, she hid razor blades in her afro and slashed her way through the men who destroyed her sister's life. It was shocking, raw, and real. Audiences had never seen anything like it. In Foxy Brown, she went further, castrating her lover's killer and handing the evidence to his girlfriend in a jar. It was revenge cinema at its most unapologetic, and Pam's performance turned her into a global icon. Behind the scenes, the price of power was steep. Studio executives propositioned her, telling her that sleeping with them would mean bigger roles. She fought them off, sometimes literally. She became known as difficult, which in Hollywood simply meant she had boundaries. She was dating legends, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Freddie Prinze, Richard Pryor, but none of it brought peace. Kareem wanted her to convert to Islam and give up acting. She refused. Freddie spiraled into depression, calling her the night he took his life. Richard Pryor's brilliance was poisoned by cocaine. Once, doctors found drug residue inside her own body. He transferred it to her through intimacy. That betrayal nearly broke her. By the late 1980s, after surviving heartbreak, racism, and typecasting, Pam thought she'd faced everything. Then came the call that changed her life. She was 39, in peak shape, filming Above the Law with Steven Seagal when doctors told her she had stage 4 cervical cancer. They gave her less than 2 years to live. She didn't cry in front of them. She waited until she was alone, then screamed until her throat was raw. But she didn't stop working. She showed up to set with wigs covering her hair loss, smiling through nausea and exhaustion. Her mother's nursing background helped her navigate the brutal chemotherapy without addiction to painkillers. When the man she loved vanished, leaving her to fight alone, she realized what survival really meant. Her sister Krista's death from breast cancer in 1990 nearly destroyed her spirit, followed soon by her nephew's suicide. Each loss carved another hole in her heart. But one night, watching a PBS documentary about traditional Chinese medicine, she saw a woman healed through herbs, meditation, and acupuncture. Pam decided to try. She combined those ancient techniques with Western treatment, changed her diet, started yoga, and surrounded herself with nature. Slowly, miraculously, the tumors shrank. Against every prognosis, she lived. In the 1990s, Hollywood had mostly forgotten her. Then Tim Burton's Mars Attacks brought her back into the spotlight, and Quentin Tarantino gave her the role of a lifetime in Jackie Brown. He rewrote Elmore Leonard's novel just for her, transforming an aging white stewardess into the ultimate tribute to 1970s Black power. She played Jackie with quiet intelligence and smoldering control. The movie earned $74 million on a $12 million budget and reminded the world who Pam Grier was. She received a Golden Globe nomination, 16 award nods in total, and still, no Oscar. Critics celebrated her, but the industry's gatekeepers kept her at arm's length. Then came television. In 1994, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air invited her to guest star as Janice Robertson, the sharp, confident friend of Will's mother, who nearly becomes his aunt by marriage. It was supposed to be light, charming, and fun. On screen, she and Will Smith had instant chemistry, an older woman's composure meeting a young man's swagger. Off-screen, Pam brought professionalism and warmth, but she was also outspoken. Between takes, she questioned lines that painted women as nags or jokes. She challenged directors to write stronger roles for Black actresses. Some people loved her honesty, others didn't. After the episode aired, rumors began to spread that she'd been banned from returning. Tabloids invented drama that never happened. Supposed clashes with producers, tension with Will Smith, outbursts on set. None of it was real. The truth was subtler and more telling. Network executives had decided the show didn't need her character again. In the language of Hollywood, that's how powerful women disappear, quietly. There was no ban, no scandal. There was simply discomfort. Pam had been too direct, too unfiltered, too real. She questioned why sitcom mothers were always secondary to the men's jokes. She pointed out that her character could have been a recurring role, not a one-time plot twist. Instead of embracing her insight, producers chose silence. The false story of her being never allowed back fit neatly into the narrative Hollywood preferred, that strong women destroy themselves. But the reality was that Pam Grier didn't fit into the box sitcom television built for women in the 1990s. She wasn't there to giggle or be rescued. She'd survived rape, racism, cancer, and the collapse of a genre built on her back. The only thing that frightened the industry was her refusal to shrink. After Fresh Prince, she kept working, often in projects that carried more meaning than money. She appeared in Law and Order, SVU, earning NAACP nominations for roles that confronted injustice head-on. In 2004, she joined the L Word, playing Kit Porter, the soulful musician struggling with sobriety and sisterhood. For 6 seasons, she anchored the show with grace, delivering one of the most memorable lines in TV history when she turned down marriage because her gay friends couldn't legally wed. That moment wasn't just acting. It was activism disguised as art. As years passed, she remained a steady voice for truth. During the Me Too movement, Pam revealed that she had rejected Harvey Weinstein decades earlier. long before his crimes were exposed. She'd learned to sense danger early. Hollywood tried to silence her then too, pulling her from an Amazon series that collapsed amid the scandal. Still, she refused to fade. She gave TED Talks about survival, taught film at UCLA, and became a mentor for young actresses who grew up idolizing her strength. Whenever journalists brought up the supposed Fresh Prince ban, she laughed softly. "I was never banned from anything," she said. "Sometimes people just aren't ready for you twice." What she meant was clear. The entertainment world had room for fantasy versions of strong women, but not for the real thing. And Pam Grier was as real as they come. Her memoir, Foxy, My Life in 3 Acts, published in 2010, tore away the myths. She spoke openly about being gang raped at 6, assaulted again at 18, exploited by producers, betrayed by lovers, and nearly killed by disease. The book sold over 100,000 copies because it wasn't just celebrity gossip, it was survival literature. Readers saw how the woman who once played Avengers and Assassins had been fighting real battles all along. She told them that every punch she threw on screen was a scream for justice. Through the 2010s and 2020s, Pam kept working. In Bless This Mess, she played a small-town sheriff who held her own against chaos. In Palms, she portrayed a 70-year-old cheerleader proving age doesn't dim the spirit. Her energy was infectious. On talk shows, she laughed easily, telling stories about Snoop Dogg fainting when he first met her on the set of Bones. "Let me tell you," she joked, "he can smooch." She was 76 and radiant. Yet even with all the love and respect she'd finally earned, that old rumor about being banned from Fresh Prince still surfaced online. Clickbait titles chasing a lie. The truth is that Pam Grier's relationship with Hollywood mirrors America's relationship with its black heroines. Admire them, celebrate them, but never give them full control. When she questioned scripts or refused exploitation, she wasn't punished by official decree. She was quietly written out. That's how power systems maintain themselves, not with bans, but with absence. Looking back, the idea that Pam Grier could ever be banned from anywhere feels absurd. She's the reason so many doors exist in the first place. Without her, there's no Angela Bassett roaring through What's Love Got to Do with It, no Halle Berry winning an Oscar, no Taraji P. Henson claiming her space. Pam Grier was the prototype, the woman who refused to die, to obey, or to be silent. She embodied strength when strength was inconvenient. She demanded justice when people still laughed at the idea. When she speaks now, her voice carries both thunder and warmth. "I survived what should have killed me," she told an interviewer in 2024. "Now I just live, fully." That's the real story behind every headline, every rumor, every false claim about being unwelcome. She was never the problem. The problem was a culture terrified of women who know their worth. If you trace her life like a film reel, the pattern becomes clear. Tragedy, fight, rebirth, legacy. From the terrified child in a Colorado laundry room to the unstoppable woman who redefined cinema, Pam Grier's story isn't one of being banned. It's one of being too powerful to control. Even her supposed absence from Fresh Prince becomes symbolic. She didn't need to return. Her presence, once felt, was permanent. The laughter, the swagger, the confidence that defined that show lived on partly because she had walked through its doors and shown them what authenticity looked like. Today, when young filmmakers study representation, they cite Pam's films as blueprints for fearless storytelling. When survivors of assault search for courage, they find it in her words. When older actresses demand meaningful roles, they point to her as proof that brilliance doesn't expire. She turned every scar into strength, every insult into art. And so the legend continues. Somewhere, a TV rerun plays her episode of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Audiences still laugh at her timing, admire her poise, and feel that quiet fire behind her eyes. They may not know that the woman on screen once defied death, racism, and misogyny to stand there. But that's the magic of Pam Grier. Her power doesn't need explanation. It simply radiates. In the end, the question isn't why she wasn't invited back. It's why anyone thought they could contain her at all. Pam Grier was never banned from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. She just moved on. like she always did, to fight bigger battles, to tell harder truths, to live louder than any rumor could silence. And somewhere beyond the cameras, beyond the gossip and the glitter, she walks away smiling, the queen of action, the survivor of everything, the woman Hollywood tried to forget, but history never will. Years later, as the industry evolved, Pam Grier found herself being rediscovered all over again. Young directors, people who hadn't even been born when Coffee hit theaters, were now citing her as their inspiration. They grew up watching Jackie Brown on late-night television, marveling at her mix of intelligence and vulnerability, the way she could hold an audience without shouting, without chasing anyone's approval. Streaming platforms started showcasing her old films, and suddenly a new generation saw her not as a relic of blaxploitation, but as a pioneer of modern cinema. Every time she appeared at a festival or convention, people stood for her. They weren't just fans, they were witnesses to living history. Pam loved meeting those young women who told her she changed their lives. Some were actresses, some writers, some just survivors of their own private wars. They saw in her story proof that pain could become power, that survival could be art. She would look them in the eyes and say, "Never let them tell your story for you. Once they do that, you disappear." Those words became her mantra. She wasn't bitter anymore. She'd transcended that. Age gave her perspective and peace. In her 70s, she moved back to Colorado, far from the noise of Los Angeles. Her home sat at the edge of the Rockies, surrounded by pine trees and open sky. She rescued horses, dogs, and even the occasional wild bird that had flown into a window. The mornings were quiet, just her, the mountains, and memories. But she never retired. When offers came, she chose them carefully. She didn't need to prove anything anymore. She only wanted to tell stories that mattered. Her roles became wiser, gentler, deeper. She no longer carried guns on screen. She carried truth. She also began writing letters to her younger self, something her therapist suggested years earlier, but she'd never shared publicly. She wrote about fear, about the pain of being seen and unseen, about learning that love isn't always enough to heal a wound. "You will forgive them all," she wrote, "not because they deserve it, but because you do." She even wrote to the 6-year-old girl who'd been hurt so long ago, "You were always brave." The world was just late catching up. Those letters became part of a documentary project she started in 2024, titled Still Foxy: The Untold Truth of Pam Grier. The film was raw and reflective. She opened up about Hollywood's unspoken hierarchies, how black actresses were used to break barriers but rarely given full credit. She revealed that in her early contracts, studios deliberately paid her a fraction of what her white counterparts earned, even when her films made more money. But she also spoke about joy, the joy of seeing women like Viola Davis, Regina King, and Angela Bassett winning awards that once seemed impossible. "That's our collective victory," she said on camera, her eyes shining. "That's every no I ever heard turning into a yes for someone else." The documentary premiered at Sundance to thunderous applause. Critics called it the most intimate portrait of resilience ever captured on film. Netflix offered a deal. Pam agreed only if the story would remain unedited, her words untouched. When it debuted globally, millions watched. For the first time, the false stories that haunted her, the rumors, the tabloid lies, the so-called Fresh Prince ban, were replaced with truth. People finally saw her as she truly was, the woman who changed cinema by simply refusing to die. A year later, she received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Standing on stage, draped in silver, her hair natural and radiant, she looked out at the crowd and smiled. "I wasn't supposed to be here," she said softly into the microphone. "Not in Hollywood, not in life, but somehow, here we are. I was told once that I was too much woman for this industry. Maybe I was. But maybe that's exactly what it needed." The room erupted in a standing ovation that lasted 3 full minutes. Cameras caught Taraji P. Henson crying. Zendaya whispered to someone beside her, "That's the blueprint." When she stepped off stage, Will Smith was waiting in the wings. Time had softened everything. The rumors, the distance, the silence. He hugged her tightly and said, You were never banned. You were just ahead of us." She laughed, that deep, familiar laugh that made even silence feel warm. "Took you long enough to catch up, baby," she teased. It was a full-circle moment, quiet but powerful. 2 generations meeting in mutual respect. In her final years, Pam talked often about legacy. "It's not the movies," she said in an interview. "It's the message. It's what you give people that lasts after you're gone." She still walked her horses every morning, still cooked her mother's old recipes, still sang to the radio. Cancer had tried to take her once, but it never returned. She told friends she wanted to live past 90 just to prove the doctors wrong one more time. And everyone who knew her believed she just might. The world around her kept changing. Streaming wars, digital effects, AI-generated performances, but she never feared the future. "You can't replace a soul," she told a journalist in 2025. That's what makes art human. Those words spread across social media, reminding people why she'd become immortal long before awards ever caught up. Some nights, she'd sit by the fireplace, a cup of tea in her hands, and look at the posters of her old films framed on the wall. Coffee, Foxy Brown, Jackie Brown, each one a chapter of her life, each one a battle won. "They thought they could write me out," she'd whisper, "but you can't erase what's already part of history." And as the fire crackled low, the legend of Pam Grier burned brighter than ever, not just on screens or stages, but in every woman who ever dared to be more than what the world expected. Because in the end, that's what she left behind. Proof that survival isn't just living, it's rewriting the rules of existence.